Hello, listeners, and welcome back to the Community Exchange Podcast. I'm Matthew Scott Goldstein, better known as MSG in the industry. On this podcast, I'm talking to the visionaries building the media ecosystem of the future. Together, we cover the challenges, the opportunities, and what's next for the industry. As always, the Community Exchange Podcast is brought to you by OpenWeb, the company building a safer, fairer, and more trustworthy internet. Now, we have a great conversation for you. Andrew Casale is president and CEO of Index Exchange. He's responsible for providing strategic direction and market vision of the company. He is the CEO. He's been there 20 years. He runs the company. He's a good friend. He's great. And welcome my guest, Andrew Casale. Now, before we before we talk about in the industry what's happening today, let's take a step back. When did we first meet? And tell me the initial conversation we just had. When did we first meet?
Well, as it turns out, we met 9 years ago.
And did you remember?
I did not.
And did I remember everything? It was like a first date.
Every detail, even what I ordered.
I remember Sarah Badler introduced us. I remember where we went. I remember the whole thing. And I asked Andrew, Andrew, where'd we meet? I don't know, MSG. First date went poorly. Okay.
It was a garden. It was outside. That's what matters.
I'm like 24, 25, or 26 between 7th and 8th.
Yes.
And the day I met you was a good day.
It was a great day.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about Index Exchange is how many people?
We're just shy of 600.
Okay. How do you run a company of 600 people, just shy of 600, coming from the person who runs a company of one?
Very carefully. Look, it's you're always learning new and better practices, but I'd sum it up as transparency. I do everything I can to over-communicate to all of our indexers all over the world, be as communicative.
Do you text everyone? Do you email them? How do you you're a great texter.
Yeah, I've got some text game. My emojis are strong.
Okay.
I think we've found over the years better platforms to communicate in better ways. Today I hosted our global town hall, for instance. We do it every other week. It's about an hour every other week, company-wide.
You talking, everyone talking?
Generally me, unless I'm not available for whatever reason,
Okay.
but I'll host it.
Q&A, I assume.
Q&A and also presentations, but just like a continuous stream of information so that everybody knows what's happening within the company and also what's happening in different cities at Index around the world. That's time and again what served us really well.
And it's an hour long? That's crazy.
An hour every 2 weeks.
Is it stressful for you, or you're like, oh, no big deal, I'm just going to talk? Because you're one of the few people I know who runs a company and understands some of the detail. So is it easy for you to have that conversation?
My team does all the work, really. So I owe everything to them. So the town hall is produced by our community team and a bunch of other contributors. So I have the easy job of hosting it and adding value wherever I can. I'll do the odd presentation as well. I would say it was a lot harder in the pandemic. In the pandemic, we moved the town hall's frequency to weekly because we really wanted to over-communicate when there was so much uncertainty. That was stressful because it was every week, 1 hour. But I think it really worked.
Okay, the pandemic.
Yeah.
What were you and I supposed to do on, was it March 21st? What were you and I supposed to do? Tell the story.
Well, we had been batting around an idea for probably a few months to host a podcast. And we had, I think, a list of potential guests and a whole format.
I have the Google Doc. It's still there.
We had a studio date picked probably on March the 21st or something like that.
Do you remember who our first introductory guest was going to be?
I don't remember the first guest.
She works at your company.
Okay.
She's in data science.
I don't remember.
Okay.
But in any event, we had a date. We had a studio picked. We were all ready to go. And then the world had other plans. So pretty wild 4 years later.
And then I was saying 4 years previously, I don't know if I was ready to be able to do what I'm doing now. I feel like I've matured enough in those 4 years. So maybe it was not meant to be, or this is meant to be.
It was not your destiny. The world had to stop for a bit for you to be ready to host a podcast.
I did not say that. I did not say that.
I think you're in a much better place today anyway. So.
Okay. So the other thing I said is I always use this comment, the company, the person, the company, the fish stinks from the head, right? So if there's a bad boss, it trickles down to everyone else. And I said the opposite about you. I think you're a great, beautiful, friendly, good smelling boss, and then it trickles down to everyone else in your company. I'm being sincere. Right. I'm being sincere. Like Lexi, is that okay to say? I can say that, Lexi, right? Producer Lexi? Yeah, she gave me the thumbs up.
Lexi is happy.
Okay. But how do you hire such, and I work with 4 or 5 of the people on your team and I see them. How do you hire such good people? And How does that all work? How does that karma all work?
Well, you're very kind, and I appreciate that.
I'm just being honest.
Well, you're very kind. Look, I look for people that, I guess to some degree remind me of myself, but are also different, that have strengths that I don't have. And I've been really fortunate to build an amazing team. But really, I look for people that share similar values, but are really better at all the things that I'm not great at. That's how I've
But I look at you as like you're good at pretty much like, again, you understand the detail and the CEO stuff. You're pretty good at a lot of things. What are you not good at?
20-year journey at one company, so I don't have any big company experience.
Excellent
best
point.
practices and running enterprise operations with thousands, tens of thousands of people, public company experience. Been able to bring talent on board that just has a perspective that is far beyond what Index is today, that also serves our ambition well as we continue to grow.
And do you do strategic planning? And do you do long-term planning? I remember at one point you said you didn't do a budget, if I remember. Was that true at one point?
There have been many iterations over the years. We've done the zero-based budgeting.
Does that work?
No. Plans are helpful.
Yeah.
But we've tried it all. We do plan. We do yearly plans and strategic plans for the company. We share those plans at kickoff every January. Historically, we would do it at all hands as well. But we typically plan in the fall. So we're actually just gearing up to move into another planning season.
Do you enjoy the planning season?
Yeah, I think it's really positive. It's an opportunity for us to take a beat and just look at us objectively and ask ourselves, what it is that we are not doing that we want to be doing, what we're not doing so great, and where we see the market moving and opportunity out in front.
Have you thought about 25 at all? Is it just starting? Or I remember when I was at Viacom Nickelodeon, I would spend weeks and weeks and weeks doing the budget. And it feels like right now is the time where you do it.
I just got off vacation, so today's first day back.
Where'd you go?
So,
Where'd you go?
It was a lot of staycation,
Okay.
but unplugging from the company was helpful. I stayed off email. I stayed off Slack. I had the odd text, which was great. So I was pretty much like cone of silence, which was wonderful, but very much getting back into the swing of
And
things.
staycation in Toronto.
Yeah, largely Toronto.
And you live in Toronto and you come back and forth to New York and
I do. I'm here all the time.
but you still don't have a place here.
Yet.
We've been talking about this for 6 years. I was going to sell you my apartment at one point and rent it out to you.
You know what? I am coming back to the idea right now, to be honest. So it could be yet not for long.
Okay. And then what are your initial thoughts about 25?
Yeah, so we move into planning in October, so we're not far from it now. To be honest, I don't expect a ton of changes on the Index strategic side. We're liking the investments that we've made, and we just want to see more time through them.
Do you want to talk about some of the big investments?
Absolutely. So for us, streaming has been a huge investment for the company over the last few years, and it's absolutely exploding. And it's not just exploding for Index; it's obviously exploding everywhere, but for good reason.
Larry Allen told me that when Amazon went all in on streaming and they opened up the ads on every single TV show, sort of changed the entire marketplace.
It's unbelievable. It's completely changed the supply and demand dynamic, pricing, but the consumption of streaming is also growing. So much like the open web, we've been on the open web for 20 years. It never stops growing. The internet always grows. Streaming is doing the same thing, only growing faster. And I'm talking specifically, the eyeballs tuned into the television, which is amazing, and certainly speaks to a very long road ahead. So those investments for us are well on their way, but we're going to continue to double down.
Okay, so streaming's number one, or streaming's one of them.
Absolutely. The platform that we launched this year called Marketplaces, which is how we support curation in the market and really sell.
Curation is the word of 24. I'm having a roundtable in the UK next week, and we're recording this on September 3rd. So I'm going to the UK next week with Daily Mail. And part of the agenda is talking about curation.
Absolutely. Curation is the premise that value creation can happen on the sell side in addition to happening on the buy side. So I think a lot of programmatic to this point has had basically everything in the DSP. You put the data in the DSP, performance in the DSP, creative in the DSP, the algorithms in the DSP. But I think people are starting to recognize that there can be some balance, and the sell side can add some of the value too. And curation is really realizing that opportunity.
It's also a great word. It's a good word.
It's a good word.
It's better than calling itself an ad network.
We call it marketplaces. We don't really use curation too much, because for us, this also represents an opportunity to build on top of the existing programmatic infrastructure infrastructure. Ad tech has had this tendency of recreating all the pipes over and over and over again instead of building on top of what is already there. Curation does a really great job of building on what is already there.
So I have a bunch of dinners, and most of my relationships happen because of the dinners I have. We talked about that earlier. And I remember one of the dinners hosted by OpenWeb, you were saying, and it sort of went over my head, you were saying that publishers have all the data. Publishers are going to start to use that data, and publishers are going to end up building the best segments that the advertisers want.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't understand that initially, but now that you said it more and more and I see the way the marketplace is going, I'm like, yeah, I get it. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, there's a bit of a trend towards signal loss that's happening right now, which is as you look at regulations that are changing the availability of signals, whether it be IDs or deterministic data, if you look at platform changes that are clamping down on signals, whether that be what Apple has done in iOS and Safari, what Google's obviously doing with Chrome and eventually Android, the ability to go from the sell side directly to the buy side is becoming harder and harder, and that signal is getting fainter and fainter.
But the publishers always have
full access.
Their signal.
So their access to their signal is never faint. And so I do believe as these changes continue, as regulations continue to clamp down on access, as platform changes continue, we're going to see the strongest signal on the sell side, which is where I think curation is in an incredible position to be able to help move the market past this current state.
Do you think the buyers and the agencies realize yet that the publishers are going to have the best signal out there long term?
I think they're testing. Whether they realize it or not will be client dependent. But what I can say is from the growth of curation and the ad spend that we see directed toward it, there's a lot of lean in right now from the buy side, which is encouraging. I also think to some degree it's viewed as a hedge. We were supposed to lose the cookie this year, the third-party cookie this year. We obviously didn't. We will inevitably lose it. But I think it's also viewed as a bit of a hedge.
Okay, so number one is CTV. Number two is curation. What are the other strategic initiatives of Index?
So for us, like the super problem that we try to solve at Index is balancing scale and efficiency. And so, as I sort of mentioned, like the internet never stops growing. Every day we now see 500 billion auctions, which is just this insane number.
That's Index's 500 billion. So there must be trillions.
I don't know if there's trillions. I think we're pretty much plugged into everything except opportunities inside of walled gardens. So I'd say the open internet outside of walled gardens, for the most part, we now see. But the thing is that number just never stops growing because consumers are more and more tuned into devices and screens.
So it just keeps on going
every
up
every
year. So when you do the budget, like, okay, instead of
year.
500 billion, it's going to be 600 billion, then 700 billion.
Exactly. So with that said, that number keeps growing, but no marketer wants to buy everything. They only want to buy specific audiences that are interesting to them. DSPs have a very similar challenge today where 500 billion is a nice big number, but to a DSP, it means cost. It means compute. It means processing. And so the market is also moving in the direction of efficiency on that side where big number is great, but what is relevant to my buyers and my clients? So optimizing that problem is our data science ML discipline at Index, which is our third big strategic investment, where we're constantly trying to get better and better and better at rationalizing the huge scale of the open internet, but making it addressable to an increasingly specific capacity constrained, cost constrained buyer, marketer, DSP, what
Is it getting easier as time goes on?
It's getting harder.
It's getting harder.
Harder.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's getting harder. It's sort of unintuitive. Right?
It's a super problem. Because you look at
super problems. Is that some computer engineering talk that I?
It's an Andrew phrase. It's think of it as the scale of the internet.
Oh, I get exactly what you mean. Yeah,
scale of the internet never stops growing, but the cost of compute is also going up. And so as a result, we need to get better and better and better tomorrow than we did yesterday at optimizing the specific problem.
Okay, we just did 3. There might be 4, but I have to take this one story. I remember 5, 6, 7 years ago when you opened up a data center.
We've actually always had data centers.
Okay.
Maybe open a new one.
Okay, and then what did you do to people in New York? Didn't you put them on a helicopter?
We did.
Okay, tell me that story.
So one of the things that we feel is a little bit challenging in our business is we effectively sell air. Like what is Index? What is an exchange? You never really can touch it or feel it. You can't go to a store and pick something off a shelf. So we wanted to try to make it real for our customers. We had just expanded, so we moved to a new data center and just expanded the facility. And we thought it would be a really interesting customer event to bring customers to a data center to basically see the servers.
Did they land?
Marketing then took the idea and ran with it. So they decided the data center in this area is in New Jersey. So they figured, why don't we put the publishers, and I think we had someone from the media as well, in a helicopter, fly them to Jersey, very short flight, obviously, and then take them to the data center and then take them back. So it's like very quick and easy and kind of cool. And they filmed it. But it was an opportunity to bring our customers to what ultimately processes their transactions.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that compared to today. Today, if there's like a NVIDIA data center, what that thing must look like.
Unbelievable.
Compared to what you did 7 or 8 years ago when you took people to a data center that was probably a little more conventional compared to what we have today.
Yeah, even for index, obviously, yeah, we're not on the scale of NVIDIA, but like our data center today, the same data center is probably 10 times the size as what we filmed back then.
Same cost, cheaper cost?
So like they sell.
I'm just curious, like the
data centers are effectively floor space and electricity, and so what goes inside the facilities is increasingly becoming more power efficient. So the newest class of Exchange node that we have is way more performant than it would have been 7 years ago, but it would definitely be more expensive because there's more floor space.
So that's three. Or there's a fourth you want to talk about, or just the three initiatives?
Those are our three primary strategic bets.
Okay.
Right now.
So also let me talk about now. Where are you going next week, Andrew Casale?
As it turns out, and also, fun story with vacation 2 weeks ago, or over the last 2 weeks, I bought a suit and a tie.
Navy, because Rich made fun of me. Navy blue, right?
I bought a navy blue suit.
Where'd you go to buy the suit?
Just a store in Toronto.
Okay.
Bought a suit.
I get all my suits at Zara.
Yeah. I don't blame you. Zara's great. But bought a suit and a tie because I'm going to Virginia on Sunday. To go to a trial on Monday, a very big trial.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? You're not allowed. It's okay if you're not allowed. Is there any more you can tell us?
Yeah, no, I'm not muzzled at all.
Okay. Do you have your own lawyer for this?
We have internal counsel at Index, so we have external counsel as well. So I'm a witness for the DOJ and the Google DOJ ad tech trial.
And there's 7 or 8 publishers talking, I believe?
Probably something around that. I think there's 19 witnesses on both sides, roughly. I don't know if they're all speaking at trial. But yeah, I will be speaking sometime next week, probably Monday.
Is that exciting? Is that are you nervous?
Like the weight of it is something that's not lost on me. Certainly I want to represent Index well.
It's a big compliment though to be one of those people picked, right?
It's a big compliment. I want to represent our customers well. I want to represent the OpenWeb well. I ultimately want to stand for fairness. All we've ever wanted as a company is a fair market. So
do you think we don't have a fair market now?
I can't comment.
Okay, there you go. I was waiting for the first. I can't comment. See, Lexi, he said he can't comment.
What I will say is it's very easy to answer questions truthfully, and that's all I'll be doing. And I think the trial will serve its purpose. We have heard it's going to be a quick trial, so we've heard 6 weeks, which is kind of mind blowing. But we could see a verdict relatively quickly. Which will be quite interesting.
And so the verdict is one thing. Have you talked all about remedies?
Well, the DOJ in their case has stated 2 paths for remedy, one being fine, the other being some form of breakup. Remains to be seen if either will actually happen, but that seems to be what they're pursuing as part of their case.
Okay. And what do you think the industry we're in is going to be like in 5 years? Like any thoughts? Your strategic plan feels like, is it next year or is it 3 or 5 years?
I'd say our strategic plan is 3 to 5 years. I don't think we're going to be changing those bets dramatically much. Certainly we'll see even more scale as more and more digital services come online. Digital out of home is growing like crazy as well. Streaming is going to continue to swallow television. So that'll just continue.
Okay. So nothing
3 to 5 years out though. I think this trial and investigations into big tech are probably going to be the biggest potential change of course.
Aren't there several other
absolutely
lawsuits pending?
I don't know if there are lawsuits pending, but what I will say is
has
there's a significant number of investigations right now happening. We're not the only company getting them, but questionnaires are sent to many companies about many different companies in tech right now. And so it remains to be seen, 3 to 5 year time horizon, what, if anything, comes of any of that. That would probably be the most significant seismic change that we could expect over the long term. Maybe nothing will come of it, but if changes are made, that's where I think we'll see ecosystem-wide evolution. Take Apple as an example. Apple's been very aggressive with a lot of their policy changes. remains to be seen if that's going to continue. Some of the investigations in the App Store are a really good example of that being challenged right now, specifically in Europe.
The 30% fee is the big one, right?
Yep. Yeah. So, well, that's probably the biggest change to the overall landscape that we may or may not.
I think it would be kind of exciting if one of the big companies does proactively break up or get forced to break up, and you see some change and more competition in the ecosystem.
That would be the precedent, if one does happen, and then perhaps it'll set the table for more to follow. Otherwise, it would just be the continued regulatory environment that we're in. The consumers first. Their data is their data. Everything needs to be transparent. We're increasingly moving into a consent-forward first world. I mentioned the faintness of signal as well. I do think that's going to bring more strength to the sell side. But that'll be
faintness of signal is a very interesting term, and like we said, the signal gets stronger as it gets to the publisher, right? So there's some visual of like small signal to the buyers, but very large signal when it comes to the publisher itself.
Yeah, like if you kind of look at like one of the gripes on ad tech, programmatic, what have you, over the last decade-ish, it's been the idea of cherry picking or cookie bombing. You're using all this incredible premium publisher media to find one person or a small, very, very small audience. So you're spending a small fraction of the media to find that one individual. I think that's going to be a lot harder to do as these changes continue.
Do you like using Slack? I hate Slack. It's overwhelming. It's too constant.
It's killed email for internal interactions. So like I used to get thousands of emails that were relevant. Now I get external emails. Okay. Yeah. Now I get external emails, and I use Slack internally. So that it has changed the way you work in a company, I think, for the better. It's almost like a separation in a way, a mental separation. I don't really use Slack externally. If I did, I think it would probably be a little bit more cumbersome. But I think it's been a net plus.
Okay, one of my goals of all these conversations is talk about people's hobbies. I have several hobbies post-COVID. And
racquetball.
Pickleball. Not pickleball.
That's how good I am at the sport.
Andrew Casale, what are your hobbies? And if you can't say I have none.
I love ad tech. Ad tech is my favorite. I definitely need hobbies. I don't have hobbies per se.
Okay, producer Lexi, producer Andrew. We need a hobby here for Andrew Casale. Throw out an idea, please. Pickleball's hard in New York City, though.
Pickleball? Okay.
Hiking.
Look, I love to walk. So
gardening, cooking.
I don't really consider it a hobby per se. I love water, so maybe I'll pick up something that's very water-based.
Don't buy a boat.
I won't buy. I've been told many times not to buy a boat. I'm not going to buy a boat, but I do love water, so something related to water. I'll work on it. Next time you have me here, maybe I'll have an answer for you.
Cooking?
I like to barbecue, but I wouldn't consider it a hobby. But I don't cook.
Yeah, I started taking up cooking a little more. My wife's very happy. I'm actually taking a cooking class.
Are you good?
I'm good at grilling. I'm not great at cooking.
Yeah, same here.
But I'm trying to get better, and it's more fun since my wife is into it. It's more fun for me to be into it instead of like her doing all the work and me just sitting there. So it's actually it's good for the marriage.
Yeah, that is good. That's healthy. I'll work on it. Is all I can say.
Okay, what else do you want to talk about?
Up to you. What's on your mind?
Yeah, it's like I've been on vacation like you for sort of the last couple weeks in August, so it's all coming back to me now. I do get nervous about publisher CPMs and what happens going forward. I think what you're saying about the signal being stronger at the publishers is true, but how do publishers then figure out how to optimize that to make a higher CPM? Like, I think in theory it sounds great, but how do you pull that off? And how's curation make that happen? And are curation houses just going to do what publishers should be doing themselves? And how's that all work? I'm not sure about that. So that's what makes me nervous about next year.
Yeah, that's next year is a really tough time horizon to put around this because there's so many other moving parts. Like, what is the new change that Chrome is going to be putting forth? Is it going to be a universal opt-in, opt-out across the entire browser? Will it be website-specific, app-specific?
Right, and that's they've talked about there's going to be some pop-up, but no one knows what it's going to be, right?
Right. So, like, there's I guess I would just say, like, on the next year time horizon, there are some unknowns that we do need some clarity around. Look, to me, I would say the most underappreciated art in this ecosystem is attribution. And the part of this ecosystem.
Well, the next roundtable is supposed to be a lot of measurement and attribution conversation. We're
So
going to talk
important.
about it tonight at dinner to figure out what that agenda should be.
It's so important though, because I think like even externally, the consumer and the public at large, they just assume like the whole market is targeting. It's like ads target me. They're creepy. The Nikes are following me all over the internet. This is how it works. And it is not the real magic. The real magic is being able to connect the media exposure to an outcome. And so I would just say like whatever changes are coming, the ability to continue to do that is what's key.
Well, even going back to CTV, you watch CTV, you're targeted very well, but no one's buying anything on CTV today.
Right.
It's all being bought on the open internet.
Yeah.
Right. So how's that attribution happen?
Well, today, like I think the less spoken about trick in CTV is the IP address. So your connected television is on your home Wi-Fi, which is connected to your laptop and your phone where you buy things. So you see the exposure on CTV, and your attribution can effectively traverse to your laptop or phone where you ultimately make the purchase. It works very well. How long are we going to have the IP address? Question mark on that too. Long term, the longevity of the IP is very much in debate right now. I think that also speaks to the faintness of signal coming. CTV has a very unique new development though, which is the fact that the experience is largely logged in by default, which means CTV actually has very good durable signal.
Because everyone's logged in to CTV with a primary
Almost everyone.
Okay.
Some of the fast apps, also the offerings within the native smart TVs themselves don't necessarily have logged in audiences, but most of the really rich, valuable, super valuable, super premium CTV supply does tend to come logged in. And so even in a world where we lose the IP address, you could then take a login, hash it, email address, and now you can still connect it to outcomes. Now, what's also interesting is even the practice of hashing is on the table as potentially long-term being durable to privacy regulation. This is, again, where like there's just so many changes coming. It's somewhat hard to call exactly what the future state's going to look like. But I would just repeat time and again, attribution, connecting the media exposure to the outcome is the real key. Less of just, I can target something really precisely. I think over time that's going away. We're not going to be able to target you. We're going to be able to target maybe at best a cohort, which might have 1,000 MSGs. Maybe not MSG, but 1,000 MSG-ish audience.
Have you seen any companies out there that are doing something interesting with measurement and attribution as of late, or is it still sort of the same as it's been for a decade?
I can't call it any specific company other than a lot of companies are working on this problem.
Anything interesting that like, oh wow, it's really, there's something there?
Look, like I think if we're able to keep hashing, connecting an authenticated audience is very interesting, very durable. And it's also very much how the walled gardens work. Like if you look at Facebook works so well because they can connect these conversion APIs that marketers sign up for to real audiences. So they effectively learn on what everybody buys.
Right, because Facebook has the pixel on the thank you page. And
it's so valuable.
Right.
So
there's only like, what, 4 or 5 companies that have that pixel on the thank you page?
Yeah. So like I would just point to that as just, it all comes back to the same premise. But I think the privacy regulations will sort this one out. And it remains to be seen long term if there will be any changes in the availability of hash.
Okay. And what are you thinking about or doing with all the Gen AI stuff that's going on?
So a lot of that falls into that third strategic area within the company, our data science and ML bets. Look, the idea of leveraging some of the new NVIDIA chips to train neural nets.
Have you bought any yet? Problems. I can't talk about that.
I think I can't speak about any of that other than to say all of that really cool hardware that lets us answer any question in the world also has a ton of applicability into the problems that we solve here.
I'll take that as a yes, but go ahead.
And so our very smart teams are looking at and poring over.
It's pretty cool though.
All of that stuff. It's super cool.
Yeah.
I just think of it as if we can ask any question and get a reasonably intelligent answer, the underlying tech that powers that can actually do some really incredible things for programmatic ad tech, this marketplace, because we happen to have a lot of data. And that's ultimately what feeds these models.
What do you think the news and information website looks like in the future if it's completely Gen AI powered? Like what's the next way that users consume a news and information website? Have you thought about that at all? And then, or I don't think it's going to happen for a couple of years, but I think some publishers will go out there and try to do something new, and there's going to be some fast copying.
I think that publishers have to create increasingly compelling reasons to come to them, because I think increasingly...
Right, come through the front door, not through a third party.
Yeah, because I think increasingly it's evident to everybody that the traditional sources of traffic are increasingly going to become more scarce. Social went first. I think search over time, it does seem like Gemini more and more is answering search queries, which is, somewhat terrifying. But I think the traditional sources of traffic are over in the next couple of years probably going to become increasingly scarce. And so what will the publisher be tomorrow? It'll be a destination. They'll have to give a consumer a reason to come directly to them. And I think that's a creative problem that ultimately throws back to why we ever bought newspapers and magazines in the first place, the brand. The brands themselves will have to find new and compelling ways to convince.
Yeah, and I think the news and information publisher of the future is personalized to me.
Sure.
So the example I used to use is I want to go to ESPN and never see football. Now I like football because my wife does fantasy, but I want to see ESPN with no football.
Yeah.
Give me that version.
Yeah. That seems like a very cool way to make the brand a more compelling destination for a consumer.
But no one's done that yet.
Directly.
And they haven't figured it out. And you need access to fundamental change. It changes everything when you start doing that.
Yeah, but change does not happen as fast as technology innovation. So the internet was around for a long time before it became super profitable. Gen AI is so new. And so you can kind of look at it as nobody's figured it out, but you can also look at it as it's very early. We're very early innings. Give it 5 to 10 years and you're probably going to have the ESPN you want. It's inevitable. Just like, we saw the internet do the same thing.
That's assuming ESPN has the rights and all the other companies, the NBA, but I'm saying,
yeah,
the NBA, the NFL just don't do their own.
And that's the beauty of the competition of business. So we have no way to know what the board's going to look like other than everyone is going to have an opportunity to use some of this technology to create a compelling reason for a consumer to come to them. And I think that's what's going to keep them insulated from changes in the way traffic has historically been directed, but will also allow us to hopefully be very comfortable with a future state where we're not just in front of a prompt for everything that we need in our lives, which I don't think is a version of the future that any of us want.
And when's the next index exchange don't you do the big event in Florida? Are you still doing that?
That was a casualty of the pandemic.
Okay, there you go. Back to the pandemic
was also
again.
May of 2020 was to be our last one. But that didn't happen. We have not planned the next one yet, but there's a good chance we will be doing one this coming year. But I don't want to speak for
it just feels like in this
marketing team or anybody
It just
else.
feels like in this world of bringing people together. I assume your company's, is it all back to office? There's some remote going on now?
We actually just this week we are now 3 designated days a week: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 2 remotes, Monday, Friday.
So people are getting enough personal time together at 3 days a week.
Yeah. The balance I think is working quite well.
You think that balance stays? You think the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the office stays forever?
I don't see any need to change it at Index. I think some companies have explored that, but I think for Index it's working very well.
Do you remember? Post-COVID, immediately people did the Monday, Wednesday, Friday back to the office as the FU to the people because then they couldn't go away somewhere.
Yeah, I like the policy we landed on. I don't see a huge need to change it, but we'll see. The great experiment continues in the world that we live in. But I think the balance of time at home and time in the office is working really well. And there's certainly work heads down that you want to just be able to do at home without having a commute or anything like that.
And the 3 days in a week being with people, it's a nice sort of happy medium.
You need that. I'm a big believer in time and interaction in person. We obviously have remote employees at Index, and so to some degree for them, we want to try to get them to offices every now and then. And when they're coming to an office, we want them to get to know the company, and it's hard to do that if the office they come to is empty. So I think it's also an opportunity to get people, even who largely work remote, to know the company that they work for and the culture that they're a part of. Without that, I think it would be really challenging long term to create the same kind of engagement that we had historically pre-pandemic.
Yeah, like I was telling you, I went through my list of the new people I met this year, and there's 25 new people, and I think 24 of them were through dinners.
Yep.
There's nothing better than breaking bread to sort of meet someone, learn about them, see them in person, share something, and then develop a relationship.
I completely agree. I'm a big believer in it. I think we met over coffee.
I don't remember that, Andrew.
Well, I remember every detail. You had a latte. No, I don't know. I love coffees, having a drink, dinner, lunch, before the boardroom serious meeting, if at all possible, or even meeting somebody at an event, trade show, what have you. I think it's really powerful. It completely changes everything.
Okay, so when you started in your company, it was like 30 years ago, 25 years ago. What was the number?
We started the company about 20 years ago.
Okay, 20 years ago. Did you ever think it would be where it is today and you'd be running it?
I think I was always running the company, even if I didn't have the title, because I was young for a while. So that certainly hasn't changed dramatically. There, like I've said before, we did not really have a plan beyond. The company was born out of being me, a young, frustrated publisher on the early internet. Ad tech was good about servicing its own needs, making giant profits, and kind of keeping the publisher buried. And I thought we and I could do better. And so that's been the guiding light. Had no idea that the internet would become what it became. Had no idea that the world's biggest companies would be in our business, whether it be Google or Amazon or Facebook. That's absolutely wild, and certainly wasn't the case when we started 20 years ago. So to some degree, I think we're continuing to, follow this journey to a much bigger ambition than the one that we started on. But yeah, the only thing that I could give you as a guiding figure would have been, I always wanted to get to $100 million in ad spend when we were like a nothing company. And the reason why that's significant is because
it's a big number.
We come from nothing. We've never raised any money. And so it always felt like this insurmountable number. And the marketplace was always crowded with companies that were very well funded, that were very well sized, that were also in and around that territory. We fortunately crossed that number a long time ago. But since then, there's been no real anything.
Do people come to you, want to invest and be part of it? Does that happen?
There's strategic conversations that I have all the time, that we've had all the time. But there's a lot of, I think, pride that I have and that we have in the independence of Index. I think it's also important for our customers. And so for me, it's never been about cashing out or making a quick buck.
Right.
That's not
long term.
Exactly.
But you're like one of the only companies out there that has never really raised money, right?
I believe we are now one of a kind at our scale.
That's pretty amazing.
It's pretty fun. No, never thought we'd have been here. Who knows where this will take us next. But yeah, it's been quite a journey.
A couple more questions, then we'll wrap up.
Yeah.
Where do you get your news from when you go back and forth between the U.S. and Canada?
Like
any sources?
Like world news?
Okay. What
do you mean by news? Like ad tech news? Like what?
No, more world news.
I hate to admit it, but I do use Google News a lot. It is very convenient.
Discover?
Just news.google.com.
Okay.
That's it. I do use it a lot.
Okay. I want to try to use a different search engine, and it's very hard because we're so addicted and so conditioned to using the URL bar as our search.
Habit. Yep.
And we've been doing it for 15 or 20 years. And I try to change my URL bar to be a different search engine, and I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I started using Perplexity to do searches.
Okay.
And the one I searched for the other day was, give me a recap of industry.
Okay.
And typically I'll go to a recap of industry, and I have to go to Wikipedia and do an update of the season of the episode and what it is on Wikipedia. And then I went to Perplexity and said, give me a recap of, industry season 3, episode 3. And it was really good.
Really?
But like, I didn't know how good it was because it took me so many clicks to get there, and it wasn't as easy as I've been conditioned to do.
Got it.
But now that I used it once, I'm like, okay, there's really good stuff out there if we actually can figure out how to get there and use it.
Have you changed your habits since that experience, or was that a one-off?
I just moved on my phone, Perplexity, to my second screen. It's right to my top screen right there.
Okay.
But now I have to remember to use it to ask myself questions. And that takes time to change as well.
Yeah. I kind of had the same experience at ChatGPT. Like, it was super fun at the beginning, but then for the most part, I just went back to using Google to find stuff. What I will say, at least for me personally, is it's an incredible drafting tool or writing buddy.
Yeah.
It can either be drafter or editor, but not both. But in and of itself, it is valuable. But yeah, beyond that, I don't know. Habits are really hard to break, so not surprised.
Okay, Andrew Casale, you're absolutely awesome. Even though you didn't remember when we met 9 years ago, right? I still love you dearly. You're a good friend.
The feeling is mutual.
You're the fish does not stink from the head. The fish smells great from the head. It is a pleasure having you here, having this conversation. Lexi, did we do okay? Producer Lexi, did we do okay?
Sounds like we did all right.
Thank you. And I want to bring you back next season, and I want to have you and a couple other people here together and have a better conversation, a bigger conversation.
Let's have a better one, too.
Better. Okay, dude, you're awesome. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.